You're listening to a download from the outdoorstation.co.uk. Number 384.
Hello and welcome to the Outdoor Station, and this the 5th in the 12-month Wild Camp podcast series. I'm Bob Cartwright and I'm recording this towards the end of February 2015. Now I'm walking into the wind at the moment and I'm hoping the recording isn't going to be too awkward for you to listen to, but I'll explain what's going on and where I am and how this particular wild camp is different to the others. Well, first of all, the weather might indicate that it's not the best at the moment, bit of a breeze, but in actual fact the breeze contains sleet and snow. We've come down to Llantony Abbey just by Offarsdyke, and we've walked east from there up onto the ridge where we're now heading north in the hope of getting close to the reservoir, where I believe there's a couple of reasonable wild camp spots to spend the night. I say we because this time I'm with my two girlies, one being Rose, the good lady of the house, and the other one being Pip, our 18-month-old Springer Spaniel, who is basically born for these sort of conditions. She is loving it. She's rolling around in the snow. She's up and down sheer drops like they were just crossing the pavement. She is bouncing around in true Springer form, making us think, A, we're really old, and B, I wish we had a tenth of her energy. This particular wild camp is different because there is Rose with me, and also obviously the dog, and although we've had dogs before, never actually taken one wild camping as such. More traditional camping perhaps, but not wild camping. So this will be an interesting experiment on how we get on and if we plan to do any more with her in the future. As I say, the weather condition it's cold. It is probably almost freezing at the moment, just above freezing, and the forecast tonight is -1, -2, with the same sort of conditions really. Light snow, probably settling a bit, but not a heavy dump. So it's going to be a chilly night, and once again we've brought a variety of equipment to use, perhaps test, talk about as we do it. The weather is typical of this time of year, really. 1 minute the sun comes out, there's glorious blue skies, and the next minute visibility drops considerably and horizontal sleet makes you just turn your back into it and think of other places you'd rather be. But as I say that, it's literally, since I started this recording, done exactly that. It's gone from wind and snow, and now I'm squinting in the sunshine and feeling a little bit of warmth, which is very nice. As you can hear, I've got all my waterproofs on, most of my layers and gloves, so hence the normal swish, swish, swish. And because we've taken the dog, and there's both of us, obviously it involves more equipment, sort of a sleeping pad for her and some back to the wind. Sleeping pad for her and various dog accessories, food and so on. And also a bigger shelter to fit us all in. So I've actually chosen the Wiki Up 3 as our shelter for tonight, because that should hopefully give us the space that we need to keep out of this weather. Certainly a magnificent view when the sun is doing what it's doing now. It's just lighting up the flurries of snow which is just coming past me. So I've got the backlit by sunlight, which is just cresting the far ridge, and also all the moisture and water droplets on all the heather is all glowing and glistening beautifully in the light. So it's quite an attractive moment when you've got your back to it. So I'm going to turn around and face it again. Talking about equipment for a moment, you may remember when I went to Germany last year to the trade fair, we interviewed Aarn Packs and discussed the rucksack system, which is split between some large front pockets and a standard rear rucksack. And so people who listened to that may remember that I was a bit sceptical about the Aarn system, although the principles were sound. They in fact sent me a rucksack last week. So on this particular trip I've endeavoured to use it and try and be as fairly objective as I can under the circumstances, and it's quite good really, because we're, as the three of us as it were, this time we've packed a lot more. And so the Aarn, I think it's called the Featherlite or the Featherweight, it's a 50, let's get this right, I think it's 57 litre main pack, and then 2 5 litre front pouches on either part of the shoulder harness. So that's what I'm currently wearing, and although we've only been going for a few hours, I suppose, the main feature of the pack being the balance and spreading the weight does seem to be quite true. I do feel a better share of weight between front and back, but I'll look at that probably a bit later on, or certainly towards the end of the podcast. Try and be as fair as I can about the positives and negatives in my view, and more importantly from my needs, because if there's one thing that's struck me about any equipment really, is that we all have different needs in the way we want to use that equipment, and so it would be unfair of me to judge it across the board, but more really from my own personal needs and point of view. Anyway, I've just hit a very steep climb, a 1-in-1, which goes on for about 50 metres, so at the risk of not sounding embarrassingly out of breath and puffing like a steam train, I'm going to stop the recording and come back in a bit. After a few hours walking along the ridge with into a bitter wind and very boggy underfoot, clumps of snow, obviously not melted due to the temperature, but a stiff breeze all the same for a few hours. There's a headwind, which is always enjoyable. We finally made it down to the reservoir, only to find probably about a dozen other wild campers, would you believe? All of whom are sort of clustered, trying to decide where they're going to camp and what they're going to do. There is a sort of a bothy by the reservoir, which I think the fishermen use. I'm not too sure whether it's an official body, as it were, and the bothy association, or whether it's just something associated with the reservoir and fishermen perhaps, and people that use it. After a bit of a chat with them, because there's quite a few, we've discovered there's a few bits of flat areas further down the Land Rover track, which actually goes takes the service vehicles or the fishermen presumably to the reservoir. And it's 4:30 now, so we thought we'd head down to what looks like to be a reasonably flat plateau, probably about 20 feet up from the stream, so we can get down to the stream, get some water if we need some, and hopefully get the shelter up in good time before it suddenly goes dark. We're in the shade now. The sun has passed over this particular valley, so it's fairly cool, and there's a breeze coming from behind us where the reservoir is. But Rose has been attached to Pip, two girls keeping themselves company, because Pip does have the legs of an athlete, and you can blink and all of a sudden she can be half a mile away at full tilt, which is great to see a fit dog, but very frustrating when you're trying to work out where she is in relation to where you intend to go yourself. So Rose has strapped her on to her belt, and I think is enjoying being dragged along unceremoniously, zigzagged across the path. Have you enjoyed your afternoon?
It's been great actually, but I'd like to think I've got athletic legs as well.
Well, you will have after this lot.
Yeah, I felt a bit like a dog sleigh really with the dog. It's the first time up in the mountains, and she's had a whale of a time.
She's been using the snow like some sort of exotic sauna. She keeps finding it and diving into it and rolling around in it. So she's still full of beans, her tail's still going at 100 miles an hour. So we'll see how she gets on when we actually put her... We bought a sort of breathable, warm coat as opposed to a fully waterproof one to act as her sleeping system. And Rose doubled up the fleece that was on the inside of the coat, because a lot of these coats and fabrics are very, very heavy duty and quite bulky, I think, really. But we've not actually tried the coat on her, so she's not actually spent a night in it. Obviously, living in the house with us, she hasn't needed it, so I'm hoping she'll appreciate it and not fight it as the temperature drops later on. Oh, there's a lovely last burst of sunshine just coming straight down behind me now, which is really nice orange glow to the landscape, and then it slowly moves behind a cloud and we revert back to the shade. Of course, 4:30 a couple of months back it was pitch black and I was tucked away in my bivvy bag. 5:30 I think one night. So the evenings are definitely drawing out further, thankfully, and it's certainly starting to feel that we're getting closer to springtime. Well, during all this chat, we're now looking down at this plateau that appears from a distance to be flat, but from this angle, looks like it might be on a bit of a slope. So I think what I'll do is stop here. Stop the recording and pick up when we've perhaps got the shelter sorted, and we can talk a little bit more cohesively about the day and the actual wild camping experience.
She's all on there, isn't she?
Yeah, I think she's about where she's going to be. And that is Pip, our dog, who is now snuggled up on a little ProLite 3 extra small with her blanket, a little bit of insulated coat that Rose has increased the insulation on, and I've finally wrapped her in one of the new Thermotex blankets, the new green one. And although she's shivering slightly, she's a darn sight warmer than she was 20 minutes ago. Yes, what happened after the last time we did a piece? Well, basically, the area that we thought we'd go to, we did get to. It was only sort of half a mile or so from where we were recording, and it was very, very boggy. and wet. The water's running off the hills fairly consistently, and it was running onto this flat area, which you can imagine made it fairly soggy. And then what made it worse is actually the wind, the gully of the wind was hammering down that plateau, and it was really not a good place to stop. So we scanned around a bit more, but nothing else. So we eventually went on to a hardcore track, which took us down towards a farmyard, where we bumped into the other wild campers that we mentioned earlier on. We'd somehow circumnavigated each other, but they waited for us, and they agreed that it was a bit of a shame. They were planning to stay in the bothy, in fact, but it was fully occupied, and they wanted space for 3 tents. But they'd been to the area before, so they said, walk with us and we'll show you where's good. And sure enough, they did. And we found a lovely flat spot right beside the stream, as you can hear now. And we've got the wiki up, as it were. And Rose is in her bivvy bag and sleeping bag and whatever. She's dried off the dog as best we can and just fed her. So I think she's a little bit happier than she was earlier on. So that pretty well describes where we are. Temperature-wise, it's blooming freezing.
My toes are cold. I've got 2 pairs of socks on, and I've got insulation on, and I've got my bivvy bag, and I've got my sleeping bag, everything. It's still cold.
So it's not a romantic night out for two. I'm the same as well. All my clothes are still on that I wore today, and I've just added my Prima Loft insulation layers, and I'm actually lying on top of the bivvy bag, but I shall be in it in a second when we heat up the soup that we've brought with us. But an enjoyable day in certain respects, but very, very cold.
The ridge walk was brilliant, though. There was lots of views. Actually, reminded me of Scotland, because 1 minute it was glorious sunshine and fantastic clear views, and then the next minute you could actually see it coming down the valleys. It was like real fine sleet, snow, hail, just complete bank of it. Walked into it, and it would bluster for 20 minutes, half an hour, and then it would be gone again. Most peculiar. It was great, actually. I really enjoyed it. I think the dog enjoyed it, even though
I was going to say, so it's her first time out, and she is shivering slightly now, tucked in between us, but I think she'll be warming up in a minute. She obviously enjoyed it. She was just full of the beans, wasn't she?
Yeah, I mean, she didn't stop, and like true Springer Spaniel, she's been full of beans, but I have to say, now we've got in, I don't think we'll hear a peep from her tonight. I think she'll be spark out.
Yeah. For anybody who's interested, I mean, obviously this is the first time we've done this, so what we decided to do, Pip's on a raw food diet, which is raw tripe and so on at home, and we add in various vegetables and mixers and cooked rice. So Rose has bought some packets of rice with her, which she'd cooked and put in a plastic bag. And to give you an idea how cold it is, the rice is frozen solid. So we've been beating that up to mash it up, and we've just mashed it in with a tin of tripe, which she's scoffed before getting back into her biffy bag, I suppose. But I think for us, that's probably the best way to go. We'd probably use a food dehydrator actually on with Pip as well, and give her some varying meals if we were out longer than 24 hours. But it's just a 24-hour thing. So it is now time to get the soup on and get us actually warmed up internally. I don't think there's going to be much happening tonight. I think both of us are fairly tired because it was an extra couple of hours walking than we anticipated. And like all good, sensible people, we're going to get warm and get our heads down and just stay quiet. The other guys, they've camped about, 50 metres, 100 metres away, and I think I can smell a smoke. They did say they'd brought some wood with them. They were going to have a little campfire, but I think it's too cold for them to sit around a campfire. They must be mad. Mind you, they're from Luton, aren't they?
Oh, is that where they're from?
Yes, well, you know. So nice people all the same, and good company. Right, unless there's anything really interesting that happens in the near future, I shall probably record a bit more again in the morning.
You're listening to the outdoorstation.co.uk. Award-winning producers of podcasts to inform, inspire and entertain lovers of the great outdoors everywhere.
Well, it's just turning 7 o'clock. I would say it's been a rather cold night, wouldn't you?
I think it's probably the coldest night I've ever slept out.
Really?
Yeah, even Sweden. It felt like it anyway.
Oh, well, poor old Pip. She's done really well, and that Thermotex blanket has kept her wrapped in that all night, which has helped. But she's not been generating any heat, so I spent a couple of hours in the night just huddled up with her, really cuddling to the bivvy bag, trying to keep her warm. And she's been okay, and she's been really calm and really good. But I do think we need to get her moving now and get her warm.
There was a couple of times she leapt up. We had some wild ponies, Winnie.
Yes.
And we just had the geese honking, and she didn't half leap then.
Yeah.
She was like, what's going on?
And of course, she tries to get out under the edge of the tent as well, which is not a good thing because the tent is actually all frosted and ice on the inside, so it's sprinkled down on top of us. So it hasn't been the most comfortable night, and certainly not the most warmest night. But you've been good, haven't you? Yes. Yes. Oh, don't make me hit the roof. Don't lick. I'm going to get outside now and have a pee and stretch my legs and see if I can get you warmed up a bit. That's all you need to do, have a quick run round. That's the dog, not Rose.
I could do the run round too.
You probably all stayed there right to the very last minute until I've taken the tent down.
Well, if I can.
Right. Should we have a brew before we go? Warm us up, yeah?
Warm a brew and something to eat and get cracking.
Yeah. Okay.
I suppose we better feed Pip too.
Oh, yeah.
Hopefully the rice won't... Well, I don't know, it might be even frozen still.
Yeah, it's true. Stop licking. Get off. Pip's allowed to do it, but not you, Rose. It's getting towards 11 o'clock now, and we're just on the path descending towards Llantony Abbey, and it must have been an incredible sight, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, just remarkable coming over the ridge now, but in the olden times it must have been amazing to come off the ridge, when it's pretty bleak up the top there, and then come down, and there's this magnificent abbey spread out before you in the Green Valley. It must have been really something.
Well, we're in the Vale of Eriwas, and apparently the abbey, of which most of the remains are still there to be seen quite clearly. Do Google it, and again there'll be pictures on the website. Was founded, if you like, by a wealthy nobleman, as you would, William de Lacy, in the 12th century. And apparently it could have been conditions like this. While out hunting in the Vale of Eriwas, he sheltered in a ruined Celtic chapel of St David and was overcome with devotion. So read into that what you will. Perhaps it was a few jars of ale and a healthy meal or something. But so he decided to found a priory here. And so by 1108, a small church had been built and the community of Augustan monks was established. Apparently, the priory flourished and was given many lands and gifts. One was the right to take fish from Langorse Lake, and they would collect them and keep the fish still alive, wrapped in wet rushes, and brought in over the mountains to the fish ponds in the monastery. And of course, that's how a lot of monasteries lived in those days. There's one in Malvern, in fact. The old fish pond, which was associated with the abbey, which is now became a boating lake, and it's now a duck pond in the main park. So that's a common feature. But apparently the natives, the locals, didn't like it very much, or didn't like them, or perhaps they weren't getting enough contribution from the abbey. So the local people forced the monks to retreat to Hereford and Gloucester, and the original buildings were destroyed. Those are the ones from 1108. But by the 13th century, the priory was re-established, and it was built in the magnificent style of which we can see today. The structures are still visible. The beautiful windows and archways that survive, although fragmentary, are clues to the grandeur and importance of the site in its heyday and the devotion of the God-fearing monks who lived there. So that was the start of its history, but of course it moved on with the famous rebellion by the great Welsh Prince Owain Glyndwrs. Llantony Priory was one of the many great buildings in Wales to be attacked in the early 15th century during the rebellion of the great Welsh Prince Owain Glyndwrs, as part of his campaign to recapture Welsh land from the English. During this period of upheaval, most of the religious community at Llantony retreated once again to Hereford and Gloucester. By the time of the dissolution of the monasteries under King Henry VIII, only 4 canons remained at Llantony, and the site was sold for £160. The canons were pensioned off at £8 each, and the buildings reduced to ruins and left to crumble for hundreds of years. However, in 1807, the land was acquired by a poet, Walter Savage Landor. He had ideas of creating a grand estate for himself, the Sharples of Llantony. He planted a large number of beech and chestnut and larch trees, some of which still stand today. However, he had so much local opposition, he eventually gave up the project and went to Spain. The estate was bought from his family by tenant farmers earlier this century. So it just goes to show, you build a building like this and the locals object for planning permission. It's the same everywhere, nothing's changed, does it, 100 years later? But I can just see our car parked on the outskirts of the building there, as we're above it now, and I can see once again that Pip, although we've stopped for 5 minutes to do this and have a few sweeties, is getting cold again. So we'll head down, and if we have time and the weather is pleasant enough, we might have a quick wander around the grounds. But I think we might just jump in the car and head back and get warm, because we're all fairly cold.
It has snowed non-stop all morning, hasn't it? Since I was glad we'd taken the bivvy bags and the tent down before this snow started, but it hasn't stopped snowing since we started walking this morning.
Yeah, it's been fairly consistent, and in fact, you know, because it's so icy underfoot, coming down this path, the little pockets of ice are really deadly, and it's I'm glad we had the poles, and well, the dog's been pulling you, but I'm glad we haven't fallen over as yet.
Touch wood.
Yes, that's right, you sniff the microphone. That's her contribution. Right, let's get going and get warm again.
The home of UK-based audio and video podcasts for outdoors people everywhere. If you have any feedback, questions or suggestions, why not drop us a line, either on Facebook or directly to our email address, info@theoutdoorstation.co.uk.
The day came to a fairly abrupt end, I guess, as after the last piece that I recorded, we headed back down into the valley and obviously to the Abbey where we had parked the car. The weather continued, unfortunately, to be pretty wet and miserable. Unfortunately, that particular day, I think, was wet everywhere in the UK. It was the kind of weather and the kind of day you just actually want to go and sit in your favourite pub with a glass of real ale and a roaring fire and your best dog by your side while you read the Sunday papers. It was dark and dingy and wet and cold. However, we got down to the car. Pip was obviously shivering and quite cold, bless her. So we gave her a rub down, put her quilt onto her, put her jacket onto her, and popped her in the car to warm up with the car. I went round the Abbey and took a few photographs which I've put on the website, the Outdoor Station website, so you can have a look what the grounds were like and what some of the ruins were like. They're still quite substantial in places. And one can imagine, you know, it must have been a very, very impressive building back in the 12th, 13th century when the natives came from far and wide over the top of the surrounding hills and surrounding mountains, looking down on this magnificent building of God. A bit like, I suppose, in some respects, my last visit to Avebury. The size and dimensions of these things in history must have been incredibly impressive on people. So it would have been quite a scene, I think, to live there. Mind you, it probably was a pretty hard existence too. The weather, as it was for us just for that weekend, turned pretty miserable. But to live in those sort of conditions for, quite a few years as an abbey must have been pretty hard going. Mind you, there are a few things now which are looking up. The Abbey actually does have a fantastic pub in its cloisters, slightly underground. And the last time I was there with the Backpackers Club, at the end of last year, there was a roaring fire in there, great real ale, and they served up a huge plate of chips, which was just perfect at the time. So if you're ever going down, make sure it's near an opening time, and I'm sure you'll have a good day or a good evening in that pub after having a look at the scene. One mistake I did make when I first did my introduction, saying we'd walked east up to the hills from the Abbey, which of course, if you know the area, that means you're walking up towards Offers Dyke. In fact, we were walking the opposite direction. We actually walked due west, up onto the ridge before heading northwest to head towards Grinvar Reservoir. I think that's how you pronounce it. And it was at that point where we bumped into the other wild campers who were coming the opposite direction, and who informed us that the bothy that's there was already full. It's got a small sleeping platform in there which takes 3 people. And we also saw another half dozen people just outside the bothy who were obviously camping as well. As we made our way southeast, as I say, we did look at a few places for camping, but unfortunately it was really, really boggy, and all the places we looked at caught the wind. So we joined the other walkers on and off during that few miles walk, and headed down to the forest area where there's a lovely flat camping ground, if you like, or a flat area next to a stream, which was ideal for the night's camping. And by the time we arrived there, it was just right to start pitching the tent. It was just getting dark and obviously getting colder, and the poor dog was really shivering. It was a shame that the actual camping area had been used and abused by people who just had no consideration. And there's a few more pictures on the website showing you some of the fire damage that they'd left behind them, some of the litter, some of the rubbish, and it breaks my heart to see people who do go wild camping not give the environment any respect whatsoever. But in the area that we were in, we sort of obviously left the other people some distance away from us. There was a good half a dozen fire damaged areas of fires that had just got far too big. You could see the forest had quite a few branches pulled off the trees that were close by, and as I say, there was a fair amount of litter. So once again, basic rules: if you do go wild camping, leave no trace if at all possible. I did mention I was using an Aarn Featherlite Freedom Pack, which I'd been sent to try for that particular weekend. And this pack was a 57 litre on the back and 2 6-litre packs on the front of the shoulder harness. And again, there are pictures of me using it on the website, and you can see what it looks like. Now, I'll be honest that I've always looked at Aarn packs and thought the idea was good, but I didn't particularly like the style and design. However, I was trying to not be biased in my experience and use it as fairly as I could. So one thing I would say about them, if you are looking at Aarn packs, or you've heard about Aarn packs and the idea of splitting the weight between the front and the back, they do carry the weight very, very well, exactly as they intend, to balance the weight between the front and the back, so you don't have this sort of toppling feeling of leaning forward or leaning back in excess when you're actually moving around. And true to their promotion, it does give you a lot of flexibility of movement in your arms. The other thing I found with it is that it was very comfortable. I'd watched the 3 videos that you're almost obliged to watch on the Aarn website to understand how to fit it properly. And to be fair, it was a very, very comfortable fit on my back, fitting to the shape of my back, virtually straight out of the bag, as it were, which was good. It felt very, very good on. So those are definitely the positives about it. For me and my style of backpacking, I'd like to, I suppose, keep things fairly simple and elegant if at all possible. And I did find that it was quite complicated in some respects with the amount of straps and clips and adjustments and things that were there as features. So again, from a personal point of view, I found them just very, very strappy. And of course, with the weather conditions the way they were, which can be pretty well typical UK weather conditions with high winds and rain and so on, I did find that the straps kept getting in the way of my movement when I was using the walking poles. One particular thing that did really annoy me is that the horizontal belt straps, tightening straps, have got large loops in them. So as I was bringing my arms left and right upwards with the walking pole, I was catching the walking pole into the loop, and of course that was snagging either the waistband or it was snagging the walking pole, and that happened quite a few times. So that was one sort of thing that really did get on my wick. But all the other stuff was good. It is a beautifully designed pack, but I personally, for my needs, I would just like to have something less complicated and less strappy. I did think that the front pockets would be of great help to me, because obviously normally with carrying a lot of media equipment, cameras and video cameras and recorders and that sort of thing, they have to go somewhere, and I do find it's best to have them in front of me so that I can reach them easily to obviously record something. However, I found that the pockets at 6 litres each were actually too big. So in actual fact, every time I wanted something out of the pocket, I had to work to the bottom of the pocket to get the item out. Now, obviously, that's not going to be the same for everybody, and I appreciate that in my case and the way I used it, it may not be how it was intended. But that was the sort of feeling I had with the pack. So they look nice, they're very, very comfortable, they're certainly good at carrying the weight, particularly if you're doing something like the PCT and you've got to carry all that water. But for me and my style of backpacking, not my choice. So it was good to try it, and I appreciate the guys sending it to me, but it's not for me. But I'm sure it will work really well for lots of other people. One of the things about the pack, that it was actually, with all the features on it, it was almost 2 kilograms. So it's 1.92 according to the documentation that came with it. And of course, I've got the TGO Challenge coming up soon, and weight is always a big issue. The worst weight to carry, of course, is the weight that is upon one's body. And I've set myself the target of trying to lose the best part of 10 kilos before May, which is the best place to lose it from, so I can be strong enough and fit enough to carry what I want to carry and not carrying this inbuilt accessory pack at the front of my body at the moment, which has come sadly from lack of exercise and too much sitting in front of computers. So I'm doing my best to try and lose that now, out running and various exercises and so on. But more importantly, before May, my next big challenge, as it were, I've got one more wild camp, but the April wild camp is, would you believe, Mr. Book of the Bivvy himself, Mr. Ronald Turnbull. Ronald's invited me to go up to the Lake District with him on April the 1st, which may or may not be a sign. So I'm looking forward to that with trepidation. So I've got a month, if you like, to get really sort of super fit for Ronald, and then I can tailor it even a bit more for May as well for the TGO. So I'm looking forward to that. In amongst all of that, during April, of course, April the 25th, we're having another one of our outdoor shows. So if you're listening to this and you're in the Midlands area, you're sort of, an hour, a couple of hours away from Malvern. It's great, easy access. All the details are on the website, and I'm just compiling lots of little deals and lots of little promotions that we're pulling together from the various reps that are going to be there supporting us. We will have, of course, the whole range of Lux tents, which are yet to arrive, but we're expecting them in the next couple of weeks, and as well as all the other brands as well that are supporting us, Eureka, Nigor and MSR, as well as a range of other stands. So we're having a much bigger show this time. We've got a couple of marquees, as well as the display area inside as well. So fingers crossed for the weather, but we're hoping to have a much larger display. So if you can make it, we'd love to see you there. The details, as I say, are on the website, as well as all the photographs and all the additional information from this particular Wild Camp podcast. So I think I've pretty well covered everything that I wanted to cover to wrap this up. It was certainly an interesting experience going out with the dog. I will try and put the gear list up for myself, for Rose and for Pip, so that people can pull on that should they wish to do so, and if it's of use to them in future camping, then that's great. So until next time, folks, and the next wild camp probably, bye for now.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To hear or see more from our extensive free library, please visit theoutdoorstation.co.uk.